Bom, estamos começando mais uma live da plataforma Music2Go. Para quem não conhece, a plataforma tem mais de 80 videoaulas, com diversas aulas com professores americanos, professores brasileiros, masterclass exclusivos de artistas internacionais como Eric Miyashiro, Rex Richardson, Trent Austin, Mark Zaus. E também estamos com um canal no YouTube, onde está colocando um conteúdo bem legal. Toda semana tem vídeo novo. Então, quem tiver interesse, se inscreve lá. E se inscreva, por favor, no canal do YouTube. Então, hoje a gente está começando mais uma entrevista online, com um grande trompetista, um grande solista americano, com Maurice Northcutt. Então, ele vai falar um pouco, principalmente, sobre como estudar, como praticar, o que você deve praticar, o que você precisa para melhorar os seus fundamentos, suas habilidades no trompete. Então, quem tiver pergunta, já vai enviando. A gente não vai fazer mais lives assim tão grandes, vão ser mais curtas agora. Então, vou pedir para ele falar um pouquinho sobre como ele começou, quais foram os professores dele.
I studied with only a few trumpet teachers. My first trumpet teacher, Frances McCamey, was my. I started taking lessons from her when I was.
Então, ele começou a ter aula de trompete com em torno de 13, 14 anos, com uma professora chamada Frances
McCamey.
McCamey, ok.
McCamey.
Frances McCamey. E ela focou muito nos fundamentos, né? Principalmente em som. Então, fazia ele tocar em lugares onde tinha uma boa reverberação, como o banheiro, como uma sala vazia, para focar bastante no som. Então, esse foi a primeira professora dele, que ele falou que ele não teve muitos professores ao longo da vida. E depois ele começou a ter aula com um trompetista de Seattle. Ok?
And that was pretty much my only regular teachers that I would take on a regular basis. And then it was a lot of one-offs, where I would take some lessons from Bobby Shu. I took a few from him, who you all know and we all love. He's an incredible teacher. But as far as the musicality goes and the sound concepts and those kinds of things came from McCamey and from Jeffrey Bergler. And then also a conductor who just retired from the Tacoma Concert Band. And his name is Bob Musser. And he is an incredible teacher in terms of demonstrating phrasing and how to be passionate about what you're doing and just all of that. And that really taught me a ton just by watching, and doing a lot of listening. So yeah, that's it. I've taken, like I said, a lot of us have taken one-off lessons. Like I said, Bobby Shu, Chris LaBarbera out of Florida. Some of you know he's an incredible player and a great guy too. I've taken some lessons from, but this is many years ago now, was Arturo Sandoval when I was very young. And what an impact that made. That was fun. And all those people sort of helped.
Did you have lessons with Arturo, right?
Yes, I had. And because he came through town, I was at the University of Puget Sound, and he was a guest artist, and I was brave enough to ask him for a lesson. And it was great.
Ok. Então, os dois professores, o professor de Seattle e a professora dele, quando ele era bem jovem, foram as pessoas que moldaram os fundamentos nele. Depois disso, ele teve aula com o Bob Schill, mais um aluno do Bob Schill, né? Em torno de milhares de alunos. E ele teve aula com o Chris LaBarbera, que é um outro grande trompetista. Teve aula com um maestro que ensinou a ele, sabia muito sobre fraseado, sobre expressão, sobre como tocar de forma lírica, né? De forma expressiva. E falou que também fez algumas aulas, por exemplo, o Arturo Sandoval, quando ele era jovem, o Arturo foi dar aula na escola que ele estava, e aí ele teve a coragem de pedir para fazer uma aula com o Arturo.
So I took one lesson, only one, and the reason I bring this up though is because his statement was what sort of spawned this idea of being honest, at least being honest in the practice room, and it was with John Faddis, and
Okay.
and and I was playing some scale. I have no idea what it was now. It was many years ago, and I blipped a note. And I was probably 19 years old or something, and I blipped a note, and I just kept going. I didn't go back, and he said, "Hey, man," and I said, "Yeah," and he says, "Don't let that go." and and actually it meant nothing to me at the time until maybe a year ago, and I thought, that's what he's talking about. Don't let it be. Go and catch that note. Don't let anything slip, and you'll be better for it. So that was a big deal for me to have this sort of epiphany.
Okay, with Fares.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. É, e uma outra coisa, assim, numa aula com o John Fattis, foi quando ele aprendeu sobre ser honesto na hora da prática. Ele estava tocando pro John Fattis, aí ele tocou uma escala e uma nota não soou bem, e ele continuou tocando. John Fattis falou: "Ei, volta lá e resolve esse problema. Não deixa isso passar, porque se você deixando isso passar, você vai acostumando e criando um mau hábito. Você tem que sempre resolver e aparar as arestas." Então foi depois dessa aula que ele começou a focar mesmo em aprender como ser mais honesto na hora de praticar.
So, how many are watching right now? Looks like we might have about 11 people or so.
Yes, and it's getting more.
Oh, okay. Are there any?
We have some questions already.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Are any of them easy?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know if you know about this, but maybe you know.
Okay. Well, I guess before we get to those, so anyway, taking lessons, at least gathering information. Bobby Shu talks about this. He says, "I can't teach you how to play the trumpet. I can only teach you how to teach yourself." Right? So gather that information, find out what works for you, and then run with that. But just don't take no for an answer in terms of the things that you're trying to accomplish in your playing. If what you want to do is play with a beautiful tone, then that's your area of focus. Work hard at it. Take lessons, like I said, and just think big but focus small.
Ok.
Yeah.
Uma coisa que ele aprendeu, né, que o Bob Shield sempre fala, o Bob Shield diz: eu não tenho muito o que te ensinar. O que eu tenho que te ensinar é que você tem que ser o seu próprio professor. Então você tem que saber que você tem que focar no som, você tem que focar na sua técnica, que você tem que melhorar essas coisas. Porque você não vai ter o professor 100% do tempo do seu lado. Então você tem que aprender como soar bem e o que você precisa praticar. And now, what do you practice like every day?
And I do practice every day. I'm probably like most people. I'm doing fundamentals. I mean, mostly it starts with fundamentals. There's the warm up, of course, like most of us. I sort of, without going too crazy into the warm ups, because I think everybody has like 1,001 warm up ideas. But for me, it's literally whatever comes out of the mouthpiece in terms of, it could be just air. And I sort of did this in my Instagram account, but in jest. But that may be what comes out first thing in the morning, and that you should allow to happen until the buzz happens. Bobby Shu talks about doing a complete flutter, allowing that. Well, sometimes it takes that. Take a break, come back until the tone comes out, but never force it. So I do those warm-ups, slowly expand, and then I can get to it. But all of my fundamentals revolve around the soloing that I'm working on. So if there's a particular solo that needs help, which is most every solo, there's something about that solo that gives me trouble. I mean, I can find the perfect solo that's going to work for a performance, but darn it, there's those, 10 measures or 8 measures in there that are just driving me crazy. And so I always refer back to the Arbenz book, because you're going to find an element of that solo in the Arbenz book somewhere.
Okay.
It's guaranteed.
And how long takes your warm-up?
It depends, because on days like today where I played pretty hard last night, my chops are a little bit sore and a little stiff. And so my warm-ups might be, well, first of all, you want to get your warm-ups in, if you can, several hours in advance. Not just warm up and then play. I mean, you might want to do 3 or 4 hours in advance. Just warm up real nice and easy, and then come back to it when you're ready to play. But on days like this, I might want to, and I'm not performing or anything tonight, so I may want to warm up again a little later today. And sometimes, maybe it's age or whatever, but sometimes when I go back to that second warm up, then it starts to feel good. Every day, every warm up that you start out, it's like rebuilding your chops again. You're starting from scratch. I think one of you guys' interviews, one of your previous interviews, talked about this, and I can't remember who it was, but every day it's like rebuilding the chops again until it's starting to feel familiar.
Yeah, ok. Eu perguntei para ele como que é o aquecimento dele, né? Como que é a rotina dele de estudos. E ele falou que todos os dias ele começa de forma bem fácil, bem leve. Então ele faz um pouco do exercício que o Bob Shield passa, que é para você começar a ter o sangue fluindo pela musculatura. E aí ele vai fazendo com o bocal, vai fazendo tipo um buzzing, mas sem forçar para que o buzzing saia. Então ele vai soprando até que a nota venha. Por exemplo, ontem ele teve um ensaio bem pesado, então hoje a musculatura dele a boca dele tá bem assim cansada. Então hoje demorou um pouco mais de tempo para ele aquecer. E quando ele tem, por exemplo, um concerto à noite, ele aquece em torno de 3 a 4 horas antes. Então ele faz um aquecimento para ir aquecendo.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that I spend a lot of time on mouthpiece buzzing. I try actually not to do too much. I find that it wipes my chops out if I do it too much. It's just enough to get the breaks worked out. So it's just so that there's no stop in there. And once that's clear, you're ready to move to the horn. It's the same process. That's it. I think we're feedbacking. I'm sorry for that. It's just going up and down, and nice and easy. Sometimes that's all I'll do. Get some blood flowing in the lips, especially for me. I'm a slower warm-up guy, but I'm not doing a lot of aggressive warm-up. I mean, at some point you're practicing, so.
Yeah. Ele não investe assim, não gasta muito tempo com buzzing. Ele faz um pouco, faz o suficiente para que ele já possa ir para o trompete. Ele falou que quando ele faz muito, os lábios dele ficam estranhos, então ele faz o suficiente apenas para já ir para o trompete. E no trompete ele já começa fazendo algo de forma bem leve, como ele demonstrou, e aos poucos vai expandindo, sempre trabalhando no som, sempre tentando uma resposta bem leve, bem rápida, né, no instrumento. Yeah.
Good. Okay. So, but let's go back. We were talking about a little bit about what it means to be honest in the practice room, and how do you get there? What does that all mean? And it's really not rocket science. It's really meant to remind you that don't let things slide. Like with John Faddis, don't let that go. Right?
Yeah.
Don't let it be. So have your tools ready to go. Like your basics, your tuners, your metronome, and I record virtually every practice session. What I find is that I'm messing up left and right in these recordings, and it requires me to kind of step out of myself and look at these recordings and say, yeah, when I'm going to the F from an E versus going from a G down, my pitch is different when I hit that note. So I can mark my part and so on. I don't know if you want to try to translate that first.
I didn't understand about the G and E.
Yeah, so sometimes it depends on, like what I found whenever I'm recording myself, there'll be little things. Well, there's a lot of things, but in particular, like if I'm coming from an E versus that F may be low or high, depending on if I'm coming from the upper note or from the lower note, right?
Okay.
So we're human. So we have to listen for those natural tendencies in the recording. We can mark our part. That feedback, by the way, is that really messing everybody's head up?
No, that's fine.
It's fine. Okay, because I can hear the feedback. I don't know if you want to translate that or not, but...
Ok. Então, voltando ao tópico de como, sobre a unicidade na hora de você praticar, ele estava dando um exemplo, né? Quando você está tocando do Sol, a partir do Sol, indo para o Mi, como ele demonstrou, Sol, Fá, Mi, às vezes a afinação está diferente. Então, nisso, ele marca na partitura dele e tenta trabalhar essas coisas. Você não pode deixar essas coisas passar batido. Quando você deixa essas coisas passar batido, o que acontece? Você está sempre criando hábitos ruins e a sua música vai sofrer com isso.
Okay, so recording every session is really important. I think it's critical. Most folks have a cell phone of some sort. Record, just let it run, and listen to it and be completely honest. It's I think it's human nature. It's probably easy to critique somebody else's performance. We're outside of ourselves, right? So we get to listen, but treat it the same way. If you're going to be hypercritical, then be hypercritical of your own playing first. Listen to it and correct those errors that are there. If it's not sounding like it's supposed to or the way you think it should be, then you need to do something.
So do you recommend to record every day?
Every day. Record every session. Yeah. And yeah, go ahead.
Ele pede, ele recomenda, né, que a gente, inclusive ele, se grave todos os dias na hora do estudo. E depois ouvir de forma crítica, porque a gente tem como humanos, né, como seres humanos, a gente tem o péssimo hábito de criticar os outros. E acaba não se autocriticando. A gente deveria se criticar tocando, na hora que você está ouvindo sua gravação, da mesma forma que você critica os outros. Então, com essa crítica, você pode melhorar e construir algo melhor para você. Let me see if there is any question. Do you know about the Prescott technique system?
The what?
Prescott. I don't know how to pronounce that. Do you know?
I don't know. As a matter of fact, regarding method books, I'm not a big method book chaser. I believe in the Clark technical studies. I absolutely believe that. And I believe in the Arbenz method book. Those are the most critical books.
I guess this Prescott technique system is something from the 30s. The guy was like a band director or something like that, and the way to get like the students practicing, it was like having the Arbenz book, and the student would practice for that week just one line.
Okay.
So
so when I'm working on,
okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So, for me, each day I've got, because I'm mostly solo, like I was talking about earlier, there are elements of every solo that give me trouble. So you'll see, in my Arbenz book, mostly there's all these exercises that I've developed for myself based on those areas that I need help. And I'm playing catch up. There was probably about a 10-year, 12-year span, maybe even a little longer, where just kind of coasting along. And coasting means you're slipping back. If you're not aggressively trying to get better every day, you're slipping back. And so, I'm playing catch up a lot and working really hard at
what's catch up?
So, if you spend 10 or 12 years coasting and working on building a career and you're not playing, you're playing every day, but not very focused, honest practicing,
okay,
you'll step back. So in order to catch up, I've got a lot of
hard work. Got it.
So very regimented practices.
Então, eu perguntei para ele sobre a pergunta do Israel, se ele indica o Prescott. Na verdade, ele não conhece sobre o Prescott. Ele falou que ele conhece pouco sobre métodos, o que ele conhece e pratica é o Arbanz, ele recomenda muito os estudos do Clark. E, na verdade, ele tem, assim, uma outra carreira. Então, ele ao longo dos anos, ele praticou bastante, mas ele não praticou da forma agressiva, porque ele acredita que se você não praticar de forma agressiva para resolver seus problemas e melhorar dia após dia, você vai ficando cada vez mais para trás. E depois para você, agora ele está num momento que ele está praticando cada vez mais pesado, cada vez mais sério, para recuperar esse tempo que passou. E só sobre o Prescott, uma vez eu li que o Prescott era um cara, ele era tipo um mestre de banda de escola, na década de 30, então era uma forma, ele criou esse sistema para poder fazer com que os alunos praticassem, porque eles não praticavam. E para quem não conhece, o Prescott é um sistema que pega o Arban, então você toca uma linha de cada exercício naquela semana. Então, sei lá, você pega 5, 6 exercícios e você toca uma linha de cada. É isso, é basicamente um método para jovens. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Everything is in that Arbenz book. It really is. And as long as you are not rushing it, that's the thing. I don't think young players often realize how slow you need to take some of those difficult exercises. For me, like I said, taking a little bit of time off from serious practicing, has really became aware of how many bad habits get in play. When you're just going out and playing a show, you take home bad habits if you don't work them out in the practice room, and it gets steadily worse. And so you really have to take it super slow. But ultimately, we're trying to make music, right? So we have to be true to the music too. What are we trying to say? What's the message? As a matter of fact, that minute master class I did for you, we talked about being passionate about what you're doing. Play with passion. That's really what we're trying to do, and I guess that could qualify as being honest in the practice room as well. So, but yeah, we need. That's the reason why we're practicing to get better, and that's to make good music.
Ok. Tira a tarja de comentários aí não está aparecendo direito. Ok. Can you go a little bit to your left? Move. Yeah.
To my left?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That's right.
Good.
Yeah. Ok. Agora está melhor, né?
That better?
Então, yes, much better. Então, ele recomenda muito o uso do Arban, porque falou que tudo que a gente precisa estudar, tudo que aparece nas peças, tem no Arban, os exercícios. E além de você estudar os exercícios, as coisas que a gente precisa estudar, ele fala que a gente tem que pensar na música de uma forma, o que aquela música, qual a história que ela está contando, qual mensagem ela está querendo passar. Então você tem que praticar os fundamentos e a música pensando dessa forma, que a gente estuda para fazer música. Então, É basicamente isso. Deixa eu ver se eu tenho. Deu certo aí com a tarja? Saiu? Ok. Let me see if there is one more question.
Okay. And by the way, hello to the folks that are watching right now. I appreciate you watching and um, doing the 1 minute masterclass with you several months ago was great. I think I met a lot of new people, some new friends in Brazil. So all of those shout outs, I think I've been seeing a bunch of blips of people saying hello, and I just want them to know how much I appreciate all of their nice comments that they've made on my Facebook and Instagram accounts. They should know that.
Ok. Ele está agradecendo, todo mundo está assistindo. E também ele ficou muito feliz de fazer um minuto masterclass que a gente colocou no canal do YouTube. Depois daquilo, muitos brasileiros adicionaram ele no Instagram e no Facebook, e mandam mensagem para ele diariamente, então ele está bem feliz com isso. Aqui, ó, a pergunta do Wagner. Quais os trompetistas que ele mais gosta de ouvir atualmente? What are the trumpet players that you like to hear now?
Oh my goodness, there are so many. There's just so many fantastic players to learn from. You know, Håkan Hardenberg has been around for so long, but he is one of my trumpet heroes, of course. Sergei, of course, is fantastic. Those players are so experienced. Not only the technique, though. You know, with Håkan, it's more about. I mean, he could play anything on the planet, but he can also play so incredibly lyrical and moving that that's what impacts me as a just a listener. You know, what moves me the most. If I took the whole trumpet thing out of it, if I wasn't a trumpet player and I was listening to just music, what do I like most? And I like music that moves me.
Ok. Então, o cara que ele mais gosta hoje em dia de ouvir é o Håkan Hardenberger. Que ele falou, é um cara que que pode tocar qualquer coisa que colocar na frente dele. Mas ele falou, tirando a parte trompetística, falou, se ele fosse uma pessoa comum, uma pessoa leiga, e tivesse sentado ouvindo, falou, a música impacta de uma forma muito forte, que o Håkan consegue tocar de uma forma muito lírica, muito bonita. Falou que é isso que tem a ver, é transmitir a música dessa forma para que você consiga tocar as pessoas. Ó, se alguém tiver alguma pergunta sobre técnica, essas coisas, aproveita que ele está com o trompete na mão. Então a gente já pode perguntar, ele pode demonstrar alguma coisa. Ok, I have a question.
Ok.
Eu vou perguntar para ele, fazer uma pergunta sobre como praticar articulação e como melhorar a articulação. Why do you practice for articulation, for tonguing? And how to get that better?
Sure. You're assuming I can do a pretty good job at it. But you know, when I first got to UPS, when the University of Puget Sound, and I thought I had a pretty decent double tongue. And so I would, you know, go into my lesson and I'd play something with some double tonguing. And, you know, my teacher in the most, and I mean this in a very nice way, but he was sort of sarcastic with me and said it really was not good. And I thought, gosh, what is going on here? So I spent the first semester basically sounding out the coups, just doing a coup, 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 so that coup was as clean as possible. And I might embarrass myself here doing coups, but...
Let me translate.
Yeah.
Ele falou que quando ele era mais jovem, ele achava que ele tinha um staccato duplo bom até ele chegar a fazer aula com o professor e o professor meio que acabar com ele nessa parte, né? Então, o professor colocou ele para praticar só com o K e só pronunciando Q, 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 Q. Agora ele vai demonstrar. Ok.
Okay. So let's see here. So so it was all on the coup first. He had me going around and playing all of the melodic exercises with coups, which was the most frustrating thing ever to just do that. So, you know, trying to match the two. Can you hear a difference? Sometimes.
Yep.
You hear it, it'll spit out sometimes. Make those as close as you can to each other. That's the first thing. But one common problem is that when we play consecutive eighth notes, they're uneven. They're uneven. So you'll find people crushing those. You hear them galloping on those eighth notes.
Yeah.
That's fundamentally a problem that's just going to keep getting worse as you go faster. You cannot gallop eighth notes. The eighth notes are even. So that becomes a problem when you're double tonguing fast.
E praticar só com K é uma das coisas mais frustrantes que tem. Porque a ideia é você conseguir aproximar a articulação do K com o Tá. Então, ele praticou bastante só com K. Então, ele demonstrou. Então, quando você está tocando só colcheias, tem uma tendência de elas não ficam certinhas, lineares. Elas ficam meio galopantes. Então, às vezes, você tem que tomar cuidado com isso. Por isso, você tem que praticar bastante para deixar elas bem lineares.
The same applies to your triplets. You know, the triplets have to be very even triplets. Some people will crush those triplets. So what happens when you get faster is now you're even making it, 3 times as hard or whatever.
Yeah.
That's it. Is that coming out clear?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So not overcomplicated. By the way, part of your warm-up should involve multiple tonguing, because what ends up happening is your tongue will cramp up if you try to go too. You can't do Carnival of Venice until you really warmed up the triple tongue, right? So
yeah, okay.
But anyway, you get the idea. Is it's so absolutely critical that those triplets are perfectly even, that you're not crushing them.
Got it. Isso também tem a ver, também se aplica ao staccato triplo, porque se você não fizer da forma correta, ela vai ficar uma coisa meio galopante, meio tac-tac. Então você tem que praticar lento e deixá-las bem iguaizinhas, todas elas bem iguais, para na hora que você colocar ela mais rápida, ela soa da forma como ele demonstrou. E I forgot the last part. I forgot the last part you said.
Oh, so did I, so it's okay.
Oh, the warm-up, ok. E uma coisa importante também é colocar as articulações dupla e tripla na hora que você estiver praticando, no seu estudo. Porque ele falou, ninguém vai conseguir tocar o Carnaval de Veneza se não praticar. Isso daí, não é só pegar e sair tocando, é uma coisa que você tem que praticar e colocar no seu dia. Eu vou pedir para ele dar um exemplo aqui em relação ao tópico, sei lá, pegar uma escala e mostrar alguma coisa que não está dando certo e como resolver esse problema.
And yeah,
okay.
Go ahead.
Can you give an example, for example, to how to be honest?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say, let's pick a scale with single tongue, and you have some trouble with some parts.
Sure.
And how to fix that?
Yeah.
What shouldn't you do?
Let me use this example that I was just doing on these repetitive triplets for just a second.
Okay.
So, or I can even take the Carnival of Venice, for example. This one is still giving me difficulty, right? I mean, I think it gives a lot of people difficulty. But I didn't do, let's see. I didn't start there. Those are triplets. I'm not single tonguing all of them. I'm triple tonguing those. And so that you've got to be able to triple tongue it that slow. And use a metronome, and you go very, very slow, and you just one click at a time. You can kind of see, I've erased most of it, but you can see in the corner there I've got my tempo marking, right?
Okay.
Got 66 in there. So, you know, you start out at 40 or 30 even, and then you cross it out and you go to 39 and 40. But it takes that. It takes that if you want it to be even. And record it. Listen to yourself again at the new tempo, and is it sounding even to you? And that's what I do. And I am certainly not. You know, I wouldn't say that I'm the most well versed in the Carnival of Venice, but that's the breakdown that has to happen. The same thing goes with some of these other difficult, you know, areas. Whether you're doing the, how many of you are doing out there that are watching that do this? It needs to be slow. I mean, it's painful.
Got it.
It's
okay.
Painful. But a guy named Robert Spring, who is, I don't know if he's still teaching out at the University of
Let me translate the first part.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Então, ele demonstrou como praticar, por exemplo, se você pegar o Carnaval de Veneza, como ele demonstrou a parte do estaccato triplo, ele não saiu tocando já naquela velocidade. Ele até colocou a marcação dele de metrônomo, e a marcação dele tem 66. Falou, se for necessário, você baixa para 45, 40, o que for necessário. Então, sempre estudar lento, se gravar, ouvir, mas ouvir para valer, assim, ouvir criticando se tá bom, se tá ruim, e deixar com todas as notas estejam iguais. Se elas não soarem iguais, tá errado, você tem que voltar e fazer mais lento e tentar procurar fazer isso. Falou, é um trabalho duro, é cansativo, mas você tem que fazer, porque senão você não vai resolver o problema, você não vai soar da forma correta, não vai soar bonito. Ok?
Let me say this, though. This is very critical for people to understand on your viewers, is that we're not talking about working on this for one day and then increment it up every day, one click. It doesn't happen that way. This is a long process. If you're getting serious and being honest and you want to get better, it requires consistent practice every single day and slowly. And you know, sometimes you get to that point where you're right at the critical breaking point where you can almost get the tempo that it should be at, but you're not quite there yet. Sometimes it'll take weeks and weeks and weeks at that one tempo. You might want to pull it back. You might have to relearn it again. For some reason, our brain can disconnect, so we might have to relearn. But it requires some consistent practice. There's no overnight quick fix to get faster tonguing. There's no easy way.
Ok. Ele quer falar pra gente uma coisa que é bem crítica. Falou assim, não é para praticar, isso não é uma forma de praticar um dia. É uma forma de praticar durante semanas, meses. Você tem que, Porque não tem outra forma, além de praticar essas coisas de forma sequencial, um dia após o outro. Porque você não vai fazer resultado, você não vai fazer progresso se você estudar de uma forma. Por exemplo, se um dia você é bem crítico, bem dando tudo certinho, aí depois você ficar 10 dias sem estudar dessa forma. Na verdade, isso leva tempo, leva um bom tempo até você conseguir resolver os problemas e soar de uma forma bonita. We have many questions.
So basically what you're doing is you're putting everything in slow motion and you're bringing everything down in the granular level. So you're not practicing from the beginning every time. You're practicing on those areas that are giving you difficulty. It can be really hard to understand. I see this in very, very young players where, you know, they love the melody. They like the melody, and so they'll play, you know, they'll play the. That's all you hear. Then they get to the other part. Then they can't do the hard part, right? Forget the easy part. You've got that. You got it down. But work on the other part. And just narrow it down to a couple of bars because it's repetitive, and just work on those. And I promise if you can just take your time, work on the hard parts, it will come to you. All of a sudden you'll have one day it'll come together. One thing that's great about being honest though, in terms of granularly working on this stuff, is that pretty much anybody can do it if they work really hard.
Ok. Ele falou uma coisa que ele vê muito nos trompetistas mais jovens, por exemplo, em relação ao Carnaval de Veneza, uma demonstração em relação ao Carnaval de Veneza. Ele vê muita gente praticando o trecho, a primeira parte, no trecho mais lento, e o cara já consegue tocar aquilo. E na hora que chega na parte do staccato triplo, não consegue tocar nada, não consegue fazer da forma correta. Então, esquece essa parte, a primeira parte que você já consegue tocar. Foca no que você não consegue tocar. Então, mas foca assim, dia após dia, durante um bom tempo, semanas, meses, até você conseguir um bom resultado. Okay.
Yeah. And when you do that slow motion work, I think it's the gentleman's name, a clarinet professor at University of Arizona, Robert Spring. I attended one of his master classes, and he believed that practicing in slow motion over and over and over again until you sort of brainwashing your head of that melody or that difficult passage. If you do that over time, you could literally go from, you know, on that Arbenz thing, you can go from 30 clicks to 60 clicks without any work in between. If you are that diligent about playing it super slow and clean, that's absolutely critical. Is really making sure it's slow.
What do you mean? Like, you put the metronome on 10 beats?
Yeah. So for example, you know, there's a theory about the importance of playing really slow. Robert Spring talks about, right, like we did. Right? Super slow. His theory is that you probably could go from that once you've completely programmed it in your brain so that it's very natural on the fingers. So you've done it many times, not once or twice, but thousands of times.
Okay.
But you could go from that speed to you can go from the slow to the fast without any work in between.
Got it.
And somewhere in there is the truth.
Yeah. Ele falou que tem um professor na Universidade do Arizona, professor de clarinete chamado Robert Springs, e esse cara fala que se você consegue fazer grande progresso, você praticar bem lento, mas não uma vez, nem duas, nem três, muitas e muitas e muitas vezes, muito lento, E na hora que você já passa para a forma rápida, você já consegue um bom resultado sem ter que praticar no meio disso. Por exemplo, se você colocar o metrônomo em 10, você já, de repente, pode já ir para 60, depois que você tiver internalizado tudo. Você não precisa passar por 20 ou 40, já vai de 10 para 60. Falou, mas sempre praticando. Você vai conseguir isso praticando de forma muito, 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 muito lenta.
Yeah, and so whether you're, let's say you're on stage or you're playing a fast, difficult passage, when you're in that performance environment, you're running sort of on this autopilot, right? Like a plane runs on autopilot. It just goes. But the problem is it'll go, the plane will go on autopilot as long as the information that is programmed in it is accurate. And so if you program your brain incorrectly, like you're practicing it incorrectly because you're just working through it, you will never come out right. You've programmed it incorrectly.
Got it. E ele falou sobre você tem que programar seu cérebro para fazer da forma certa. Se você programar seu cérebro para fazer da forma errada, praticando errado, você vai estar programando seu cérebro para fazer da forma errada. Então não tem como você chegar no momento de, sei lá, no concerto e fazer o certo. Então não é assim, você tem que programar seu cérebro para fazer as coisas de forma certas. Ok, let me see the questions.
Give me some easy ones.
Okay.
You know, all this technique stuff it's all well and good, but we need to make music too, right?
Of course. Can you see that?
Okay, I have an Easter gig at 7:15 a.m. where I'll need to play the Cantata 51. Yep. Okay. Oh yeah, and the Trumpet Shell Sound by Handel. What do I recommend for performance with piccolo so early in the morning? Yeah.
Okay, let me translate the question.
Yeah.
Aqui é uma pergunta da Dani Garcia. Eu tenho uma gig, né, um trabalho de Páscoa, às 7h15 da manhã, onde eu terei que tocar a cantata 51 de Bach e o Trumpet Shell Sound do Handel. O que ele recomenda para performance com piccolo tão cedo?
Yeah.
Tão cedo de manhã.
This is Danny Garcia? Is it Danny?
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. Hi, Danny. Thanks for the question. I know we've all experienced that. It's just so painful. It's one of the most humbling experiences to have to go through. First of all, you're going to have to get up early, right? You need to get up early and warm up slow. And I will admit, though, even a warm up, it's just getting blood flowing that early in the morning. It's a real challenge. The one advantage you have on the Trumpet Shell Sound is that there's that long break in there. So sometimes the conductor will let you leave, and if you can leave and stay off stage, that's great. Then you can warm up. But get yourself, if you don't have one already, a practice mute for piccolo. I have one. I have a couple of them. Most of them are terrible. I'll tell you that most of them are terrible, but they're good enough to get movement going. But don't forget about your fundamentals. That's your air, right? Don't worry so much about this. Use your air. Keep things firm and tight in terms of the corners, so that they're focused. But air is going to be your friend here. And I don't mean too much air. I just mean consistent air, the proper amount of air for what the instrument that you're playing, right? You can't overblow it. But yeah, proper warm up before the show. That's all I can tell you. But take advantage of that practice mute if you can. I have it all the time. I pack a practice mute for my trumpet and a practice mute for my piccolo, and it's been a lifesaver.
Ok. Ele disse que, por exemplo, nesse caso que ela vai ter que tocar muito cedo, ela vai ter que acordar bem cedo. Vai ter que acordar bem cedo, vai ter que aquecer. Falou... Mas não se esquecer dos fundamentos, não se esquecer do som. Não pensar muito na boca, mas pensar mais em soar bem, fazer música e usar e abusar, que é o que ele faz com as surdinas de estudo. porque ele tem surdina de estudo para trompete, surdina de estudo para piccolo, falou, isso ajuda muito, resolve muito na hora que você precisa. Ok.
Yeah, I would also recommend that I caution him to practice too much before the performance or not at all. And meaning, like if you're practicing the night before, try not to practice too late into the evening. Give yourself enough time between the practice session and then that early morning Easter gig.
Ok.
Just trust me on this. If you can give yourself enough healing time, you'll be a lot happier. Promise.
Got it. E no caso também, não praticar muito no dia anterior e principalmente não muito tarde no dia anterior, para que você possa dar mais tempo de descanso para sua boca, porque você vai tocar bem cedo, então assim você tem um período de descanso bem maior. Aqui, ó, a pergunta do Pablo. Pede para ele falar como ele estuda flexibilidade. How do you practice flexibility?
Well, in the Arbenz book, I'll show you so in my book here on my iPad, this is my my regimen for my Arbenz book, and you could see triple tongue, double tongue, flexibility in there, and lip flex I called it. And I don't know if you've ever looked at that much. It's all right there.
Yeah.
See? It's there.
Yeah.
It's in the Arbenz. There is no secret. You know, it's all right there. If you can follow what Arben has already outlined, it will be good for you. Now, I have better success doing lip slurs when I'm warmed up. I don't believe in flip slurs necessarily as your warm up. I think just like with an athlete might do, they're not going to overstretch. They're not going to do aggressive stuff until they get blood moving, you know, those muscles warmed up. So I don't do overstretching kinds of things to get that worked out. I mean, that's just the way I am. I don't do it as a warm up. I don't know if our viewers do much tongue arching or believe in that. That helps. That can help drive some of the airstream. You know, you're usually riding in between.
Let me translate.
Yeah.
Okay. O que ele pratica para flexibilidade está no Arbenz. Ele mostrou lá tudo que ele pratica. Ele tem uma lista das coisas que ele pratica. E basicamente está no Arbenz. Então ele tenta praticar a flexibilidade quando ele já está aquecido. Ele não acredita muito em você aquecer fazendo flexibilidade. Ele prefere já, porque flexibilidade é um trabalho pesado, então ele já prefere fazer isso quando ele está aquecido. E aí ele vai falar agora um pouco, você não sabe se o pessoal conhece muito sobre língua arqueada, o que pensa, mas ele falou que isso ajuda bastante, isso ajuda a direcionar o ar em relação à flexibilidade. Ok.
So page 40, at least in my Arbenz, page 47 is another one that's very helpful. It's there. I mean, you know, again, talking about 1,001 method books out there, right? It's all right there. There is,
Yep.
you know, you don't need to buy a bunch of books to figure this out. It's here. The hard part is being very disciplined about it. You know,
Okay.
taking it super slow. Right? Slow. Anyway, you get the point, right?
Yeah.
Just go slow.
Got it.
You just, yeah, you have to take it super slow. The other one in here with whatever it takes. Just
Yeah.
make sure it's smooth.
Então, ele pratica a flexibilidade da mesma forma que ele pratica as outras coisas, começando de forma lenta. Então, praticando de forma lenta, tentando deixar tudo mais perfeito, só o mais perfeito possível, e aí você só vai aumentando a velocidade da forma, na velocidade que você quiser chegar, né? Então, eu quero perguntar para ele, como o pessoal está falando que ele tem um som muito bonito, ele soa muito bonito, eu quero perguntar para ele como é que ele pratica coisas líricas, essas coisas, como ele pensa em fazer música.
So,
can we talk about how to make music?
yes, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
How do you practice? For example, pick a lyrical passage,
Okay.
a lyrical excerpt, and
Yeah.
how to practice that, and what do you think about?
So for me, I you know, if you're doing popular music, for example, well, you have lyrics from a vocalist, let's say. If you have that, if you're doing some sort of big band chart and there's some lyrics to it, understand that message. Understand what the lyrics are telling you. That helps you kind of get the mood, the tone of the style. Like right now, I have this beautiful arrangement that was done. I think Chris Walden did this arrangement of "You'll Never Walk Alone" at the Cancer Blows performance, and I had someone orchestrate this, David Deacon Jr. orchestrate this for just as a piano reduction, and this is a beautiful, beautiful piece. And just listening to you know, the melody alone actually will do it. But if you take a look at, I just got this, so I haven't done much with it, but I'm going to show you what's on the page. Okay, you see all those rests in there? There's a bunch of quarter note rests in there and whatnot in the melody line.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So this is how I'll interpret it, though, rather than what it's on the page. So every note has to go somewhere. You know, we talked about people who inspired us or taught us, some of our teachers. My former teacher at UPS, not the trumpet instructor, but my conductor, and just recently retired, Robert Musser, talks about that. He said that every single time, notes have to go somewhere. They're either fading. Are you back?
Okay. Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, great. So every note should go somewhere.
Vocês estão vendo? Tá tudo certo? Tá aparecendo aí? Sem bateria? Okay. Go ahead.
We're good?
Yes, we are good.
Okay. So yeah, just making sure that I think that was the question, basically talking about lyricism making sure everything that you play goes somewhere. There are plenty of recordings of every. I mean, I know there are a lot of bad ones, but there are also some good ones out there. Go with somebody that you admire as a trumpet hero, but listen to those examples. If you can find a vocal version of what you might be working on, that really helps. Usually, vocalists are trained to understand what phrases are doing. Where the cadence might be, or a pause. We sort of look at it linearly when we don't see the lyrics, so we just kind of blow right through them. But I think there are plenty of opportunities to kind of study from vocalists.
Okay, let me translate. Ele tá falando sobre música, né? Então, por exemplo, se você vai pegar uma música, uma partitura, vai tocar algo que tem a letra, fica mais fácil você entender o sentido das frases. Então, aí você pode pegar a letra e aplicar na melodia que você vai tocar. Mas no caso, quando você vai tocar música que não tem melodia, que não tem uma letra definida, ele mostrou a partitura dele, que ele tem as marcações de respiração, e um dos professores dele, quando ele era mais jovem, sempre dizia que uma nota tem que levar a próxima nota. Tá? Quer dizer, uma nota tem que sempre levar para algum lugar. Então, uma nota se move, que vai movendo a outra, e isso vai criando a frase, e vai criando todo esse sentido musical. Let me check if we are live.
What's that?
Let me check if we are live or not.
Okay. My screen is showing live. Maybe we can ask somebody to text us a hello.
Vocês estão vendo? Vocês estão vendo? Tá tudo certo? Ou travou o vídeo? Yeah, we are back.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So did they catch everything that we're talking about in terms of musicality?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, and I think it's actually one of the most important things of playing your instrument, right? We talked earlier about how, we're trying to make music. That's the whole point of understanding fundamentals and getting through all that stuff, is to make music. But, if you're comparing soloists or comparing music, what's separating one trumpet player from the next? There are lots of people that can play super high and super loud, super fast, and amazing technique. But really, they're being separated by sound first. That's the first thing you hear, is this sound. What do they sound like? And then, are they telling a story? Are they presenting a message?
Yeah.
And I think that matters more than a lot of higher, louder, and faster. But I think we have an obligation to make sure that we're telling a great story when we play. There's this beautiful, I heard somebody play the same melody about probably not even a week ago, and they played it very, very different than I did. And what they did was they didn't. Remember, I talked about it's got to go somewhere. The notes have to move somewhere. They have to have direction. Right? It's going somewhere. All the way to one, right? It's going all the way. Those little things, it changes the whole landscape of what you're doing, is if you have direction to each one of those notes. You know, it's not subtle, but it makes a difference. The line goes this way rather than just, you know.
Yeah, got it. Yeah. Então, aí ele demonstrou como pensar, né? Falou, você tem que pensar na linha musical, porque a música se move de forma musical, numa linha musical. Ela não se move como ele demonstrou, fazendo pam, 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 trechos por trechos. Ela tem que ser uma coisa que se conecta. Então, você tem que pensar e procurar expressar a música dessa forma, pensar de uma forma totalmente musical, que você possa contar uma história, você possa transmitir aquilo. E uma outra coisa, quando você pensa assim, o que separa os trompetistas? É claro que um toca mais agudo, o outro toca mais sabre e tal, mas principalmente o que se separa? Separa é som, como que ele soa, como ele consegue contar uma história através daquele som. É isso que faz, primeiramente, as pessoas parar para ouvir alguém tocar. É o som, é o cartão de visitas.
Yeah. So yeah, and you can apply it to all kinds of stuff. I'm working on Rhapsody in Blue, and they're all through that. There's just all these for airflow and direction. So you know, but also keep it in perspective. Let's have fun when we're playing, right? We can't forget that.
Yeah. E uma outra coisa, assim, a gente não pode se esquecer que a gente tem que se divertir. Não é só um trabalho duro. Tem que ter o trabalho duro, tem que ter toda essa preocupação, mas você tem que se divertir na hora que estiver tocando.
You know, I like to talk about being, you know, play with a beautiful tone, be very serious as you can in the practice room, but then when you're out of the practice room, have fun with what you're doing. I know I am. I'm trying to have a lot of fun, and so.
When we are practicing, right?
Well, when I'm practicing, I try to be very serious about it. I don't want to waste my time.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's a very isolating experience, and so nobody wants to just spend hours in there unless they're accomplishing something. And every time I walk away from there, I feel like, you know, this was worth my time, and that's the way it should be.
Got it. Falou, então, na hora que você estiver tocando, você tem que se divertir. Mas quando você estiver praticando, você tem que ser muito sério. Porque, no caso dele, ele é muito sério praticando. Na hora que ele pratica, na hora que ele estuda. Porque ele não quer gastar o tempo dele, desperdiçar o tempo dele na hora que ele estiver praticando. Ele quer ter resultados. Ok, I think we are done.
Yes.
It's more than an hour.
Oh, my goodness. I'm
Yeah.
talking too much.
A gente vai finalizar a live, mas eu vou pedir para ele mostrar uma coisa antes pra gente. So, before we finish, can you play a little bit for us? Something that
something that moves me. Let's see here. Okay. You put me on the spot. What should we do? How about...
Ele vai tocar pra gente uma coisa que ele gosta muito.
Is there... oh, I kind of played already, but... Let's see. What do I like? What am I in the mood for right now? Oh, I don't know. Let's see. I'll just go back to do You'll Never Walk Alone, and I'll finish it out, the second half of that thing.
Ok. Yeah, that was great.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you. And before we start, before we finish, can you show us a little bit of the lake?
So yes, I am so lucky. I live in a beautiful place, in a beautiful part of the Pacific Northwest. Let me see if I can do this. Okay, ready?
Yeah, ele vai mostrar pra gente o local onde ele mora aqui, que ele mora num lugar praticamente num lago.
Can you see?
Yes.
Actually, let me go outside just for kicks, since I've got you on.
Wow.
How about that? There you go. Yeah?
Yeah, that was great.
So, so when you're visiting the area someday, you're going to come and see me and you can hang out.
Yeah, sure. Ele falou que quando alguém tiver pela região, pode ir lá visitar ele e se encontrar. Então é isso, estamos finalizando mais uma live. A gente quer agradecer ao Morris pelo tempo dele. So Morris, thank you so much to share with us
thank you.
Your time, and hope to see you in Brazil. Are you going to be in Miami in July?
I am going to be in Miami.
Okay,
we'll be there. So I hope to see you. And I respectfully ask all of your fans and all of your followers to say hello if they see me, because I'm going to be sort of a deer in headlights. You know that saying?
Yes,
so I may not see everybody or get it connected, but I want people to say hello if they recognize me, if they want to say hi. It'd be great.
Yeah, I guess most of them won't be there.
Sure,
but I will be there. We'll have have dinner.
Yes, for sure.
Ok, então ele agradeceu todo mundo por ter participado aqui dessa live. E aí agora a gente vai estar com uma outra live marcada, a gente vai divulgar em breve, vai ser com um aluno do Caruso, lá da década de 60. Então, para quem tem dúvidas sobre como estudar o Caruso, a gente vai mostrar aí nas próximas semanas. Então é isso aí. E a gente... Não tem mais uma pergunta. Então, é isso aí. Valeu, pessoal.